Hi, this is Colonel Doug Macgregor, CEO for Our Country, Our Choice. This is Critical Insight. Joining me today is Ann Vandersteel. She's a well-known personality on the right as an influencer, investigative journalist, hosts Steel News, as well as her own podcast right now with Ann Vandersteel. So today's guest is, I think, someone that everyone should listen to. This is Ron Vitiello. He's a former chief of the Border Patrol. He spent 34 years in the Border Patrol, which is a very long time to do anything in life. And we're always grateful when we run into people who are public servants who are willing to invest that kind of service and time for the country. He was also the acting commissioner for both ICE and director of the Border Patrol. I mean, he's one of the few people that has in DHS, Department of Homeland Security, who's essentially supervised both agencies. So we're very happy to have you, Ron. Thank you for joining us.
Well, great to be with you both. Thanks.
I'm going to turn over to Ann, and don't get nervous. It's dangerous always to turn anything over to Ann, but nevertheless, I'm turning it over to Ann for the first question.
All right. Good morning, Ron. Thanks for being here. I've
Thank
done
you.
a lot of work. I've done a lot of work around Fast and Furious over the years and have met a lot of people who actually never got their day in Congress. Good friends of the Terry family spent a lot of time dissecting what happened to Brian Terry that fateful day when he was gunned down in 2010. And in light of that, Brian Terry's brother, Kent, actually reached out and had a question for you. And he wanted to understand why the Border Patrol hasn't pushed back in D.C. about the guns not ever being recovered while still putting, you and your valuable agents in great danger. Do you have concerns and reservations about, the guns that were never recovered from Fast and Furious?
Yeah, I wasn't aware that the weapon used in Brian's case was not available to the government or hadn't been seized by the government. Yes, it's of concern because we know, given the investigations that have gone on, that this is probably a gun that the government either knew about or may have been provided to cartels and smugglers across the border. That Fast and Furious case, lots of errors, lots of tragedy that ended up there. But it's news to me that they don't have it. Lots of evidence in that case. It's been a long time since we've reviewed it, but I didn't know the gun wasn't in custody of the government.
With respect to, moving forward in the timeline, also spent a lot of time down on the border, down in Panama, in the Darien Gap with Green Beret war correspondent Michael Yon. And of course, the Declaration of North America signed by Joe Biden and Obrador, the president of Mexico, and Trudeau out of Canada, has basically homogenized and created one region, dissolving the borders between the three countries. As a Border Patrol agent, talk to us about the challenges that has posed to the Department of Homeland Security and CPB with respect to just determining the unmitigated disaster of who's coming across the border and, how this impacts, the level of terrorists that have entered our country.
Well, there's examples all across the country of people who don't deserve to be in the United States, who are danger to the public safety of the United States because of the President Biden's policy to tear down all the control levels that he inherited when he became the president, which started the worst humanitarian crisis and border security crisis than we've ever seen in the history of that border. When Joe Biden became the president, when he swore in, we had 45-year lows of illegal migration activity across the southwest border, almost 50 years worth of control. He tore that down on day one. He stopped building the wall. He put a moratorium on deportations and removals, which was later reversed by states who sued them. But it's caused the worst migration crisis that we've ever seen in the United States. And Border Patrol agents and the DHS frontline, instead of being out there patrolling the border, seizing fentanyl, protecting people from human trafficking, saving people who are in distress crossing the deserts, they're stuck with this humanitarian mission in which many of them are doing that part of the job versus being out there and patrol and protecting us. And this president, absolutely no credibility, Joe Biden, on the issue of what happens at our border. He took it from the best it's ever been in a long time to the worst we've ever seen, and has denied that it's their fault. First, they said it wasn't a crisis. They refused to call it a crisis. Then they said it was Trump's fault. He inherited a broken system, And then it was Trump's fault again, where Congress didn't engage, and Trump reversed the bill after he said he didn't have the power to do it without Congress. Now has implemented a feckless executive order, which we have now seen has no change with the numbers of people who are coming to the border every 24 hours.
And lastly, with respect to the non-governmental organizations, Catholic Charities, I've witnessed the atrocities of the human trafficking and smuggling perpetrated by Catholic Charities. And as you said, the humanitarian crisis has fallen squarely on the Border Patrol agents, particularly down in Texas, where I've seen Catholic Charities work in concert with Border Patrol to scoop up the people that are coming across. If you had your druthers, would the United Nations be defunded so that we would, remove all funding for these non-governmental organizations, but like the IOM, which are clearly organizing this weaponized human migration?
There is definitely an industry that has stood up around this mass migration, this flow in the pipeline, this migration, and where the cartels, apply their influence. They destabilize governments. They put people in trafficking situations. And these NGOs, not all of them are there to help these people. Some of them are making money like the cartels are, hand over fist. And so it bears looking at, like, how much money is coming out of U.S. taxpayers into the UN to help facilitate this flow. I think that's something that bears looking at in every case as it relates to what's in the pipeline, who's facilitating that pipeline, and then some of the settlement in the United States. Again, there's lots of money being exchanged here. Some of it is U.S. tax money, and we should have a real handle on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know that the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society has been heavily engaged down there. And of course, Mayorkas, who is currently the director of the Department of Homeland Security, was formerly on their board. So it's no surprise that he's not lifted a finger to prevent any of the cash that is flowing down there from reaching these non-governmental organizations. Now they're being briefed as they go north, these migrants, and told, make sure you get your last four Social Security numbers. You need to vote for President Biden. Vote for that ticket, blah, blah, blah. It's really disgusting. I have another question for you, though. Several of today's border agents have sent us emails at OCOC asking us to point this out. They say that the border has become progressively more and more dangerous to American citizens as well as members of the Border Patrol. They insist that the cartels have effectively sophisticated military surveillance capabilities as well as unmanned aircraft and very, very dangerous and lethal weapons. Could you talk a little about that for us?
Yeah, the job of a frontline Border Patrol agent is more dangerous now than it's ever been. You have this uncontrolled flow. That flow enriches the cartels, right? Because no one walks all the way up to Mexico to the border and crosses without some awareness, if not tax, if not being actually smuggled by cartels that are in Mexico. They effectively control the real estate just south of that line, and they decide where people enter and how they enter and under what conditions. And so this puts lots of money in their pockets. And you think about a modern drug cartel, they have resources and immeasurable resources to do anything they want along that border. That is, weapons, unmanned aerial systems, counter surveillance against government officials, all of the things that allow them to basically control the border. And you'll hear about these large groups of people that show up across the border, tying down the Border Patrol agent in that humanitarian mission, making sure those people are safe and cared for, while just up the river, the drug smugglers and the cartels have their way with, they can bring in anything or anybody they want. And that makes it much more dangerous. Their resources way outmatch what the government can do in that space.
So effectively, we can say that our southern border is really in the hands of the cartels, criminal organizations now. Is that an overstatement or is that accurate?
No, that's accurate. They have never seen the kind of resources that they have access to now because of this large flow. Think about it, 4,000 to 6,000 encounters by CBP. That does not count the number of people who are not seen by law enforcement or are seen and not apprehended by law enforcement. So we think during the pendency of this president, it's between 10 and 11 million people who have come into the United States. DHS sources, the secretary himself has told Open Press that 85% of all the encounters that CBP makes at the southwest border are people who are released in the United States. And that affects every city and town in the country. We saw what happened to Lake and Riley just outside of Atlanta. You know, two brothers from Venezuela, known gang members, were arrested previously in other jurisdictions outside of Atlanta. And then this one brother killed her in a terrifically brutal way. And this Venezuelan gang is now stretched out across the country. And again, open source reporting in Houston, Dallas, Los Angeles, New York, and Miami, they're taking over illicit drug sales in those communities. And let's face it, they've only been here for the last 3 years. We have yet another transnational criminal organization that has influence on the streets and towns of the United States that didn't exist in our country in the way it does now, less than 3 years ago.
Yeah, you know, it's the whole thing is such a travesty what we see our country being completely impacted. But, you know, some of the changes that we see happening in Central America are significant with respect to the recent election of Jose Molina, who's the new president of Panama. Having spent a lot of time down there with Operation Burning Edge and multiple journalists, we put a big spotlight on what was happening in the Darien Gap with the NGOs, the United Nations. And the new president-elect is now vowing to close the Darien Gap. To you, is that really just more semantics? Because when you close one door, they come through the window. And of course, the United States government is flying them in directly into cities in the country. Does that mean we're just going to see an increase in flights and the Customs and Border Protection processing stations along the border will slowly but surely dry up because the flows will discontinue? Or how do you see this, you know, playing out under this current regime in power?
Well, the Gap is a dangerous area for all of the people that are in it, the folks that are in the pipeline using that route. And so the government of Panama, you know, like just like with Mexico, just like with the Northern Triangle countries, we need willing partners to help us address this flow. If we continue to let the cartels set the agenda on our border, if we continue to have this feckless policy of mass releases of illegal aliens into the United States, it's going to be more dangerous every single place. And if Panama can and will step up to control that traffic, that will help the entire region, including what happens on our border. And so if they can slow the flow, if they can start, you know, prosecuting smugglers and criminals that are in that area, if they can stop people just walking into Mexico, that would be a good thing for us. Very difficult to do, much easier to control the Darien Gap than it is our own 2,000-mile U.S.-Mexico border. So every little bit will help. But it's not a solution so long as the policy in the United States doesn't support control.
In that connection, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions and take your time, think about this. Is it unreasonable to characterize Mexico as an organized crime state? Is Mexico essentially the Wild West? So we can't really expect significant cooperation out of their intelligence, police, and military organizations? That's the first question. And the second one, and this may be perhaps more important, what purpose does the Department of Homeland Security actually serve? Do we need this bureaucratic entity? Can we get rid of it and do something else?
Well, it's a very good point. The department was created in the aftermath of 9/11 to make and understand understand what we were doing as it related to uncontrolled migration into the United States. Those 19 hijackers, you know, their status in the United States, some of them as students taking flight training, unaware, but our entire government was unaware of what was going on. And then it came back in a horrific way. So the department exists to understand those threats, stop those threats, and control the border ultimately. As it relates to the cartels, you know, Mexico has, you know, there are vast regions of Mexico that have been destabilized by these powerful criminal cartels, these organized crime organizations. And yes, you know, we can't 100% completely trust all of the agencies in Mexico, all of the individual agents. There are good, hardworking law enforcement patriots in Mexico that can help us occasionally. So we have a relationship in which we share this problem with them. And if they have an honest broker in their, the equivalent of their White House and in their legislature, we can do important things with them. We can work this problem with them together, but we can't depend on them. We can't outsource what we need to do. And it all really goes back to, does the policy in the United States help us control the border? And right now it does not. So whether Mexico is a strong, confident, a partner we can be confident with now, it really doesn't matter, because Biden policies allow for the border to be out of control and in chaos. And that just helps the cartels, which minimizes the impact of any law enforcement, trustful or otherwise.
Before we let you go, I think Ann has at least one or two more questions for you, but we really appreciate this. And your message is going to reach a lot of people, and it's an important one. And we thank you for your frankness and your integrity.
Yeah. So again, thank you, Ron, for being here, because this is such a critical time in our country. And, I get a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails about people saying, the president's policies, where they really aren't in alignment with our Constitution. Of clearly, he's ignored Article 4, Section 4. And for that matter, the governors around the country ignored Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, where they could have defended their borders. And at this point, every state is a border state, as you know. So then you have to regress back to the people. We are the government. And in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15, the Congress shall have the power to call forth militia. Is this the time when sheriffs have a responsibility to their citizens to say, hey, we need some help. We need to deputize some of you out there and create a posse or a militia or whatever you want to call it. But because the government isn't doing their job, they're clearly ignoring the Constitution, obviously, and their policies are so erroneous. And would the Border Patrol perhaps even stand with the people at this point, understanding they're an agency, not elected, but do you think they might, if they saw the safety and numbers of the people standing, do you think they'd stand with the people?
Well, they enjoy great support for the local law enforcement and in most of the communities that they operate in. So they would be welcome to have help on the border in any form. But ultimately, this goes to what the policy is on our southwest border. This administration has engaged in activity that everyone knows that if they get caught at the border, if they turn themselves into Border Patrol, they're going to be released in mass across the United States. And that's just going to cause more traffic and more chaos at the border. And this is a solvable problem. You talk about the Constitution. There are laws in the books, the Migrant Protection Protocols, an historic agreement that the last administration had with Mexico, allowed us to work together with them. The Migrant Protection Protocols flows from immigration law, bipartisan law in the United States, as well as understood internationally via treaties. Safe third country is immigration law. If you pass, as an example, if you pass out of El Salvador into Guatemala and into Mexico to claim asylum in the United States, we have a right as a country to send you back to one of those other safe third countries, in the case of Mexico or Guatemala in this example. We had that agreement with Mexico. It was working just fine before Joe Biden took over. It ended the last surge in government. So we had less than 1,000 people coming every 24 hours. Now we have over 4,000 people coming every 24 hours. So if the policy and the law are not adhered to by the administration, then we're all stuck. And agents would be more than happy and do work with local law enforcement and local communities to help keep those communities safe. But this really starts with the leadership at the top. They have to set an agenda to protect us. And I fear that this administration won't do it unless they're not there anymore.
I agree. Ron, thank you so much.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when they're not there anymore. Although I'm disappointed that Congress has shown so little interest in dealing with these problems. We're sending billions overseas, as you know, and we're starving the Border Patrol and border security that desperately need help, support, and assistance.
I
Ron,
agree.
thank you. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ron.
No, I agree. The men and women down there, the frontline folks, they need our support. And certainly the government, including the Congress, needs to step up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ron, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate everything you've said. And as I said earlier, this will go viral, I'm sure, and reach a lot of Americans who want to know the truth. And you've told them the truth, which is something they don't hear much in Washington, D.C. these days.
Well, great to be with you and have that chance. Thank you.
Right.
You know, our country has seen a war around the world, but frankly, the war is here right now. And it's just a tragedy to understand that our own government, supposedly to protect us, they have a job to defend the American people, simply refuse to do their job. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They're creating policies to allow this mass weaponized, humanized migration to turn completely into an invasion of our country. We know we have terror cells in all 50 states, and we know we have known terrorists that have come across the border. What we don't know is when they're going to act. It's not a matter of if, it is the when factor. And it's not W-I-N, unfortunately, it is W-H-E-N. So again, I am grateful for the fact that we actually get some truth out of people that have served our country, and we appreciate their continued service to deliver that truth. And we're asking our friends out in America, just like the government's asking you, if you see something, say something. Don't wait. Don't do what the FBI does and tell people that, oh, we've tracked them, until it's too late and they've already acted.
Well, I think Ann's summed up that entire segment beautifully. We were very fortunate today to talk to Ron Vitiello, and it's a courageous act in and of itself these days to simply tell the truth. Shouldn't have to be that way, but I really think it is. So that's it for Critical Insight. Thanks so much for joining us, and that's the view from Our Country, Our Choice. Thanks.